Hello, dandies everywhere. We've run two of these types of interviews so far, one with the chairman, one with the manager. How would it be possible to start the season without talking to Aberdeen Football Club's Director of Football, Stephen Gunn? Morning, Stephen.
Morning, Graham.
Yeah, ready for this, looking forward to this. And for those who are still irked about the way last season went, let's admit that in a little bit we're going to talk about last summer's recruitment and your assessment of where it went wrong in terms of the majority of the players now moving on and us having had a really difficult season. But I'm unadulteratedly excited about the operations that you pulled off this season. If I count correctly, it's 9 signings plus a couple of players recuperated, Ryan Duncan and young Hancock. I don't think you need to waste time saying, okay, just because we've had a good summer, that's a massive league campaign guaranteed or a cup going to be lifted, any of that stuff. The summer for you and Darren Mowbray and for the board and to an extent for Jim Goodwin, the summer is your Scottish Cup. Your area of combat is the transfer window. You've taken 9 players and one I don't think Aberdeen Football Club in its history, certainly in my lifetime, I can't remember us having signed 9 players and taken in a couple of more. And we heard the manager after the last win talking about there being more to come. When you've got such complicated operations, so many of them, such research to do, what kind of experience is it to go through for you and your team?
This has clearly been a really busy period for all of us in the team, and it's not just about the period within the window as well. All of this work clearly starts, 8-10 months in advance of the time that we're in now, and this really kicked off when Darren Mowbray was first appointed later last summer. And to pick up on the point that you raised initially, and people will be expecting us to cover it, is that none of us are sitting here looking at the last 12 months and thinking that there's been anything to take from that we should be particularly proud of in terms of the performance on the pitch, and that obviously comes from some of the work that we did last summer. Now, we came through that period, a significant period of transition then, with a new management team, and it was a new infrastructure right across the football operation as a whole. And one of the areas that we did evolve was the recruitment department, and we needed the time to make sure that we got the right individual in place in Darren. And Darren was the outstanding candidate through that process, and that process took us into the late summer. So we didn't get the benefit of Darren's expertise, his knowledge, his network until really he was fully in the door. And clearly that was at a time when we'd already started competition. We'd had games obviously in the league early on, and also in European competition, and we needed the squad in place to try and be as competitive in that as we could. Clearly there's lessons to be taken from last summer, but all the processes that we've put in place now with Darren, the work he's doing with his team, with the scouting network that he's had, and it's an area we've invested in over that period also. It puts us in a much better place in terms of the decisions that we're making on recruitment, and hopefully we'll see the fruits of that once we see this group of players that we've assembled now gel and have time together, and let's see what they can produce on the pitch.
Listen, Stephen, I'm gonna put you right on the spot right away, okay? You and your team have hired a Portuguese junior international striker. You've managed to bring in a North Macedonian who's playing in Hungary. You've managed to bring in an Albanian Kosovan. You've managed to nick into Celtic Park and take on loan a young Irishman with lots of talent. There are other ones to focus upon, but I want you to now shed all executive responsibilities and say, because you're a dandy, you were a dandy before you went to Robert Gordon University and before you were hired to this club, before you spent 2 decades trying to make our club better. Which of them is your favourite operation? Which of them, given the difficulties, given when you first were brought player files on all the various media that Darren and his team can use, made you go, wow, that's the one. Pick one and tell the fans which of these operations has been the best for you.
In terms of the process?
In terms of the glow, the ready break glow you get when you go home at the end of the night and you see the family and go, boy, we've done a good couple of months work there, and today we nailed it.
I think, I could pick a number of those on that list that you've just read there, but I'll maybe just pick on the Ramadani one just because of the process, the time that it took, and obviously the added complications of Brexit and the new procedures that we need to go through to get some of these players into the club. So we effectively changed how we identified our initial pool of players. We do a lot of data work, and Darren Mowbray, his background is in data analysis too. He did have a playing background, moved on to data analysis and subsequently in player recruitment, and we're able to utilise all of those skill sets that he has and brings to the table. He does have data analysis support as well, that we've invested in to make sure that we are looking in a pool of players that, one, we think is affordable for the club, and two, that we think is going to bring a level of quality that's at least going to be able to compete in our team, but also improve how we've performed.
So when you and Darren, like his scouting team first, when you first see Ramadani, what are the things that stand out?
I think one of the initial things was being able to translate to the Scottish game, and Darren and Tom O'Neill, one of his scouts, both had a meeting with me, excited about what they'd seen. Darren was at a game, I think it was in February, in Hungary. They went to watch Miovski, in fact. They saw Ramadani also, and I think it was in the 92nd minute, he made a lung-busting run from edge of his own box into the opposition box, and I think his team were 2-0 up or something at the time, and right away we thought that's the type of character that we want in our team.
Still hungry, still got legs, still got lungs, wants more, that kind of impact.
Yes, absolutely. And we were trying to add more energy to the middle of the pitch. We're trying to add characters into the dressing room that can be a positive influence, not just by how they communicate with players, but also by their actions. And right away, that's what we saw in Aylbor.
I'm gonna, if Zoom allowed you to reach out and punch me in the face, this would be the moment, because I'm going to commit sacrilege now and say there's a little bit of Simi in him. When I've gone back and looked at the tapes, he loves to get in to a midfielder receiving the ball with his back to goal and nick in just a tiny little elbow bomb and get the ball and nick it and away. When I see that, I know that not only is that really effective for disrupting other teams, it's what the Pittodrie faithful and the travelling Red Army want to see. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the things that he brings to the game suit Aberdeen, suit our philosophy, suit Scottish football. He's robust as well, he's brave, but not only brave in terms of going into the challenge, he's brave on the ball, he's good off both feet. We think he can score a goal from the edge of the box. We've seen him do that in his recent career, and we think if we're dominating the ball in a lot of the games, particularly at home, then we're going to get a lot of chances, we think, at the edge of the box, like we saw last season actually, and hopefully with his energy and enthusiasm to attack the box, then we think he can get on the end of a few cutbacks or even create a wee opportunity for himself. But it's that infectious enthusiasm for the game that was the thing that came through. But clearly the quality was important for us as well. He retains the ball well. He takes the ball off his centre backs. He can play 6. He can play 8, and we think he's fully rounded in terms of what he can bring to the team. All right, I'm going to get all technical. When you say 6 and 8, each country has actually got slightly different definitions. Do you take 6 as being the organising central midfielder, what the Spanish would call a pivot, a 4 in Spain, the position that we saw Guardiola playing, somebody who organises the middle of the midfield and links with the back 4?
Yes, exactly. I think traditionally the 6 has been that pivot. Take the ball off the centre back, make the first few passes. But I think what we're seeing more and more now, and we've probably seen it even in Derek's time with Stephen and now with Jim, that they like their midfield players to be rounded, to be able to do a bit of everything. And more teams will maybe play with 2-8s, like teams did.
Stop there and help the punters by saying, what do you and the coaching team mean by an 8 in our system?
I think, an 8 versus a 6 is somebody that's got more licence to get forward. So in some games, you might see us play with one of the midfield players or 2 who will stay the defensive side of the ball. But I think what we want to try and achieve, and the way we want to play, particularly at home, in a lot of games away from home, where there's an expectation that we are going to be the dominant team, an expectation both from us and from our fans. That's when we're wanting to be able to commit men into the box, and we need our midfield players to be able to contribute goals. We probably saw in the last couple of years anyway that we've been over-reliant on maybe 1 or 2 players in terms of the goals that we're producing. So we need that to come from more areas of the pitch.
Okay, give the Dandies fans a real privilege to try, without breaching confidentiality, take them into your world. Stephen, it's bread and butter to you and to Darren and now to our board and our manager. But when you're trying to recruit a Kosovan Albanian from a Hungarian club, just try and tell people about how the flipping heck that happens. Give some details about travel, language, making contacts, finding out an agent, convincing. Try and paint a proper picture of how that operation happens.
Well, if I take us back to February earlier this year, when Darren Mowbray travelled to Hungary to watch Miovski and Ramadani, then he was met there by the agent of one of the players. He builds that relationship over a period of time, and that's not the start of the process. That is the part of the process where he's going to validate what he's seen on the video, what the data work has been telling us. So this is him now going to see with the eye, and we commit now to try and ensure that we're able to do that on all of the players that we're bringing in. There's obviously different facets of how we arrive at the decision. There's the data work. There's the work that we do on video. We always have maybe 4 or 5 scouts do reports on each individual player, so we get that different flavour of the views across the
sometimes contrasting opinions, presumably, in order that you can balance it out, and it's not everybody saluting the big boss's opinion. It's somebody chucking, well, I see this potential problem, or oh no, I see this that maybe somebody else hasn't witnessed that's positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we like to do is see them in different environments as well. So we'll watch a game where they're playing away from home. We'll watch a game where they're playing a team at the top of the league or the bottom of the league. We'll watch a game that they've lost or won, so that we're not seeing only maybe the good side and we get overexcited about something that might not translate to here. So different environments we want to see them in.
Stephen, let's not beat about the bush, because this is analytically crucial. For people that pay season ticket money, for people that sponsor our club, for Aberdeen DNA members, everyone needs to realise that's a pretty serious outlay of cash. If you're going to take which I think is indispensable to back up data work and video work with in-person work, when you see body language, when you see what the camera's not following, when you hear what the fans in a stadium think about one of their players, that's a pretty serious outlay of cash.
It is, but we see it as an investment in the decision or decisions that we should be making on players. And if I take this back 12 months or so, the board backed us in terms of the structure that we wanted to put in place, and we're not fully there yet in terms of filling all of those roles. We have just in the last month or so recruited another full-time scout within the department, Graham Ellis, so he will be working closely with Darren. And
just give me that first name again.
It's Graham.
Yeah, he's a good signing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point you make about the signing, I think you're absolutely right. If we don't get these decisions right in terms of the who the people are that we're sending to watch these players, watch these games, make the technical assessment, make the recommendation back to Jim, then it'll fall at the first hurdle. But that's something we believe that we have now in place, and that's why we've been able to visit a lot of these countries in person. I think Dave's mentioned it on a previous interview. Darren has been, I think it was 16 countries in person, and we've watched games in 24 countries. So that's the type of network we've opened up, and it's become increasingly difficult to source the level of quality that we need in our team locally, and by locally I mean within the UK. And more we were finding ourselves competing for players that maybe we didn't truly believe were going to take us to the next level. So that's why we've needed to go further afield to try and achieve that.
The first Aberdeen jersey I was ever given for Christmas in '68 or '69 was Henning Ball. So it's a goal, Henning Ball. It's not all that unusual to have foreign players at Aberdeen. However, I'd be surprised if we've had such an international mix as we do right now. And therefore I'd ask, in terms of, we've already pointed out that this summer has been a large operation. 9 signed, 2 brought back, several out, with possibly some more signings to come. It might be coincidental, but I'm saying that there's going to be benefits that Bojan Majowski and Ramadani have played and trained together for MTK. And I'm going to say that that's similar about the fact that the Geordie Messi, Callum Roberts and Jayden Richardson have trained and played together for Notts County. You don't go out necessarily deliberately to sign that, but when you bring that, that's got, for Jim and his coaching staff, that's got to be a bonus.
I think so, and I think it's a bonus first of all in the sense that when we have Ramadani committed to come to Aberdeen, and we are looking to try and commit Majowski as well, and Majowski knows there's a familiar face already in the building and somebody that's taken that leap of faith to come here, then that certainly helps. Obviously the understanding on the pitch, hopefully we get that anyway through the work Jim's doing on the training pitch. But I think it probably does give these guys a head start in terms of the movements that people will make. Ramadani, we've already seen in the games, he likes to make slide rule passes in between centre backs and full backs, and hopefully he'll be finding Bojan with some of those passes.
Listen, tell me, you don't need to explain to Dandies fans the pitch that you make to a player to come to Dandies, because we all love the club. But the process of persuading somebody, pick anybody you like, we've spent time on Majowski and Ramadani so far. What extras are they asking of you? What are they wanting to be confirmed? You used a good phrase there, leap of faith. I think the modern footballer is conceptually quite used to the idea of changing culture, changing country, changing language. But, it's a couple of years since we won a European trophy, a couple of years since we won the league. What do you have to do, and pick an example of any of them to say, right, make that leap of faith, beyond agreeing a salary?
Yeah, we do follow a process. Sometimes that takes different turns, depending on the player, the agent that's involved. But one of the things we do with every player is we do an introductory call. So myself, Jim Goodwin, Darren Mowbray will get on the call with the agent, with the player, sometimes a member of the player's family, and we essentially do a pitch. This is what our club is all about, and the aim of that is to try and answer as many of their questions before they actually ask them. So we cover what the city's like. We cover, this is the environment you're coming in at the training ground. This is what you'll be coming into in the building. This is what we provide you. This is the team of people that work here. These are the pitches you're going to be training on. This is the stadium you're going to be playing in. These are the fans that you're going to be playing in front of. And also we touch upon our recent record as well of being able to develop emerging talent, build a value in that talent, and hopefully those players, move on and achieve things as well at other clubs. And a lot of the players, particularly the ones I would say that are in the early part of their career, they're potentially looking at Aberdeen as a stepping stone. But if we can convince them to come here for a good part of their career, they help us achieve what we need to do on the pitch, and we help them make the next step in their career, and we're able to realise a value for that at the end of that process, then that's exactly what our model needs to be. But all of that is only worthwhile if we end up achieving what we set out on the pitch. And it's all very well, building a value, selling talent on, taking that resource in, that finance in, and then reinvesting it. But the whole point of taking that approach is to make sure that we are in a better place going forward to help us win on the pitch.
Listen, we can't waste a whole interview on this point specifically, but it's one thing I hold very dear, and you used the word. Over my time, over my life, not just my career, Aberdeen has been a club where the playing philosophy has been dictated by the coach that comes in. And I've always believed that really senior clubs, important clubs, where there's consistency of vision, you have a playing philosophy. This is how we play at this stadium. This is how we play on the road. These are our concepts. And you hire coaches or managers based on that. Now, I don't think we necessarily did that very much during my lifetime or career. But you used the word philosophy. Do we have an enshrined philosophy? These are our playing principles. And hiring recruitment staff, hiring a coach, hiring a fitness preparator, hiring players will be based around our philosophy. Do we have a Bible of how we want to play from now until, this isn't the board that's in charge of the club and somebody has different ideas? Do we have that, Stephen?
Yes, we do. And over, I would say, the last 4 or 5 years, that's something that's been refined. And we're actually going through a process right now where that is getting presented again to the board, probably late September, early October. So all of the football staff, the staff there with the technical expertise of the game, from the manager all the way down to the youth academy, they're all involved in that process. And clearly, when you bring a new manager in, and Jim's been in for a good number of months now, he's got his views on, what that looks like as well. And there's 2 elements of that. One is how you want your team to look, but obviously, when you break it down into its constituent parts, right, what does a right back look like? What does a centre back look like? So we've been taking on board Jim's views on that as well. And I think with the players that we've brought in, you're starting to see some of the criteria that we've set, and we spoke about it before with Eelber. It's that ability to get up and down the pitch. Yes, he's a nice football player to look at on the eye, but also can he be effective with the other side of the game? And it's elements like that we're refining now, and we clearly involve our sports science team in that as well. And one thing that we have tried to be more thorough with this recent batch of recruits is the medical process and who's involved in that process. Now, clearly, the doctor, the physios, they're the people you would expect to be involved in that process, but also the sports science team. Right, what are the battery of tests? We're seeing something in Eelber Ramadani when we watch the video. Are we able to see that when we do the tests that we set as part of the medical process? And that just reaffirms as well, helps I suppose strengthen that decision that we've taken based on what our eye is telling us. So it's trying to find all these ways to add value to the decision-making process, right from the the first part in terms of the data side, then they going to see the player in the flesh, and then obviously through the next part of the recruitment process in terms of is he the right character? When we get on that call with him, when we meet him in person, is he the person that we think he can be? And then obviously onto the medical side.
Okay, key thing there, and you've mentioned it before, and when I interview directors of football or talk to scouts, and sometimes clubs phone me and say, we've done X much on a player in Spain, tell us the rest, tell us the personal side, find out what his character's like. It's now both probably the most difficult part of a recruitment operation, unless somebody's asking for double the salary than you've got budgeted for, which is pretty damn difficult. But it's also one of the most necessary. It's an emerging science. Character data, personality, behaviour traits. What do we as a club do about that? What have you learned? What examples can you give about how to find out about a person?
You can tell a lot, obviously, when you observe the games. You know, when the games are not going well, when they give a pass away, what's their next pass like? But also all of those things you alluded to there in terms of trying to do the diligence beyond what happens on the pitch. And clearly that can become a challenge the further afield you go, but that's where the network becomes really important. And a huge part of bringing Darren Mowbray into the club last year was his experience as a European scout with Burnley. And this isn't something he's doing new. He's no rookie at this. This is a guy that has done this at the highest level in the English Premier League. So he's been able to bring that network with him to Aberdeen, and already we've benefited significantly from that. So it's not like when he picks the phone up, he's having to introduce himself. I'm Darren Mowbray, the head of recruitment at Aberdeen. A lot of the people he'll be speaking to will know him very well from his previous role.
And the suggestion there is that what he can do is he can probe into those areas. There was a really good book analysing. Liverpool is one of the clubs in the United Kingdom that has best done its operations in terms of spotting people at the right time, in terms of all the attributes that you've been talking about that a club needs, but also in terms of buying them on the upward curve in terms of value. They'll play, their value will rise, they may eventually go, but they'll be part of a successful season where trophies have come and a rise in general of what's been happening at that club. And you know, when you analyse not only their use of data and how well the owners have backed them in buying and selling, they were following Alexis Sanchez around and checking out what he drank when he went to cafes, and trying to phone people up and say, you know, give us the inside scoop on this fella. Is he what he appears? There are limits to that, but you're saying that Darren's got a network whereby you can ask the hard questions: attitude, nightlife, mentality, behaviour patterns, discipline, things like that.
Absolutely, and what Darren's brought is an extension to the network, clearly that's already here. You know, I've been in this, not this specific role, but a role very similar to this for quite a number of years now. And likewise, Jim, in his time at St Mirren and Alloa previously, you know, the network that we've got now, hopefully if there's a player out there, we're able to pick the phone up to at least 2 or 3 individuals that are going to be able to give us an accurate assessment of what that player is. And the benefit that Darren brings is that obviously pushes that ability further afield to do that into the far reaches of Europe and beyond. So we think we've got that relatively well covered now. And Jim is, he's absolutely sure that he's not going to bring a player in off the wrong character, and one that we don't think can fit into this culture in this dressing room. And we've seen that already. Obviously, you guys and the fans hear about all the players that we choose to sign, but you don't always hear about the ones that we choose not to sign. And a few do fall by the wayside because we've done that side of the diligence, and we don't think it's going to be a right fit for Aberdeen.
Listen, we moved into a positive phase. The interview has maybe only got 15-20 minutes to go. We don't need an entire post-mortem, but I think we do need to confront what happened just before Darren was appointed, just after the end of last season's transfer window. One, what do you think the principal problem was in terms of how well the signings performed? And you hinted at this earlier on. Specifically, what have you and the recruitment group learned?
I'll pick up on the second point first, the learning process. So we have an infrastructure in place now that we just didn't have this time last year. So that ability to look at the wider market across Europe. We did know the markets we wanted to be in at that point, but we didn't have the same capability that we do now to actually go and exploit those markets. So the fact that we've got that infrastructure in place now with Darren, with his team, with a new performance analysis team now as well, that wasn't in place back then. We took Jordi Rams as our new head of performance analysis. He has come from Midtjylland, and he is originally from Barcelona. So he spent some time in the youth and community football setup at Barcelona before he went to the US and then on to Midtjylland. So that's another guy that adds to that network. And he also brings obviously a level of expertise operating at a level of club that he has, like Midtjylland, who've European pedigree as well, and they have a really strong track record of how they use data and the decisions that they make. So all of these things have helped us improve on the position we were in this time last season. So it's difficult to compare where we were then with where we are now, because most areas of the football operation have had quite a significant change, actually, either in their leadership of each of the functions or within the support team within those functions.
Try and explain, if you can, again without breaking any confidences. As I understand, a sort of system whereby there's a very specific head of recruitment, a director of football, a coach, we often call it a manager, and a board. In the systems I've seen working best, not just in Spain but across Europe, the coach will get a very specific voice at the beginning of the process saying, I need this position, I want this type of guy, I want this age profile, all the various things a coach might say. After which it kind of goes to the recruitment department, where the director of football will guide and steer in terms of contractual possibilities, budget possibilities, wage possibilities, and then eventually there'll be a wide range of suggestions comes back. And I want to know who's involved in the sifting out, in the selection. At what point does the manager get involved? Because I think there are stages in that process where it's far too soon for a coach to get involved. But ultimately, if the board has said yes to the package financially, at what point does the coach, our coach, now I am talking specifically about Jim Goodwin, get to say no or yes? I think the Dandies fans would love to understand the specifics of that process.
Yeah, looking at this, my role within this and how this role sits either in England or throughout Europe, obviously there's different structures at different clubs, and I am of the firm belief that all of the people you mentioned there, the board, the manager, myself, and the head of recruitment in Darren Mowbray, we all need to be on the same page from step one of that process. So step one really is we've got a budget available. That is set by the board. We have a football monitoring board that sits below the main board, which is basically a subgroup of the main board, includes myself, Dave Cormack, and a couple of the other directors, and Jim attends those meetings as well, and what they want to hear is what is our plan for the next 6, 12, 24 months in terms of squad structure. Clearly there's a big financial element of that, and because I suppose we budget quite aggressively as well, and set ourselves quite significant targets in terms of cup progression, qualifying for Europe, where we finish in the league, then the onus is on us to make sure that we do have that sporting performance on the pitch, and the rewards, the financial rewards that come with that, but also the building the value and being able to reinvest on player sales. So the Football Monitoring Board, including myself and Jim, are all on the same page with that. So we leave those meetings with a clear idea of the expectations that are upon us. We meet regularly with Darren as a recruitment team. I speak to Darren multiple times every day, not just in the transfer window, because people think we're busy now because all of the everything that we're doing is coming to fruition. But this is a process that's ongoing for the whole 12 months of the year. There's no let up with that. So we are able to identify what funds we've got available, what players we're going to retain, who might move on, and then we agree where we want to target those funds. Is it a starting number 9? Is it a potential backup central midfield player? And we try and make sure that the structure of what we're investing in each position fits with what we believe they can obviously bring to the team. Now, that sounds a very obvious thing to say, but what you don't want, and it does happen quite often, and you see it at other clubs as well, and it's something we're trying to improve at, we don't want a whole lot of resource sitting on the bench and not contributing. So we need to be quite sure in our decisions that the ones that might take a little bit more investment than others are the ones that we think can have a real impact in the team. Stop the ball going in the goal, put the ball in the other goal.
Those old things.
Providing the assists, yeah. So we do try and keep that to a structure, and that then informs the individual profile of players that we're looking to bring in. And to answer your question about Jim's veto, if you want to call it that, that can happen at any stage in the process, and players we can become aware of players through the recruitment work we're doing, through a phone call that somebody's made. Maybe it's a player we didn't think was available, now has become available. That does happen on occasion. So Jim can say no immediately, or we can go and do some work. He can, if the recommendation is strong enough that we take it to the next level, then Jim can go and spend, hours and hours on Y-Scout, or, speaking to people that he knows in his network. He can come back and say no at that point. So we're never going to bring a player into this club, and we've never done it, and we're not going to start to do it, that the manager absolutely doesn't want to be in his dressing room. So that's just a reassurance to everyone that that's the way, and I firmly believe that's the right way to recruit football players.
It's a good enough answer. I want to link back to Jim's interview that I did at Pataudry at the end of the season, just before the Champions League final. He talked about wanting to play a high line. He talked about wanting to have the defence much higher up, so that the midfield was higher up, so that we were pressing opponents, both home and away, but particularly at home, which ties with what you're saying about Ilber having the chance to shoot from the edge of the box against potentially a packed defence. And he talked about, I'd felt that watching the team last season, it didn't play high enough up. It was partly because of maybe a lack of pace in behind. We didn't have a natural left-footed centre-back. Joe's not a player. So I want a snapshot of Keller Roos, please. Because when he's been playing, we can already see, he's like another midfielder, never mind a sweeper keeper. He's very comfortable out the pitch. Just give a snapshot of information about this guy from Nijmegen, or originally from Nijmegen.
So Kel's obviously spent a significant part of his career in the UK. I suppose he's used to the hustle and bustle of what the game in the UK can be. So, he can handle himself, I think, in a packed box. He's got the physical presence to handle himself. But like you pointed out, distribution, it was always going to be key for us in bringing in another goalkeeper. And what we think we've got now is real competition in the number one spot. And Joe's been a really important servant for Aberdeen, both on the pitch and off the pitch. His whole time here, I still think he's got a huge amount of value to bring to the team and to the club. But I think he would admit himself that he never had that real competition for a place, and now that's there, and we should have that right across the pitch. And I think with the ones we've brought in this summer, whether it's at goalkeeper or further up the pitch, I think that's what we do have now, competition for places. And Jim has, beyond what might be the starting 11, this weekend against Celtic, he's going to have options on the bench that can come and actually make an impact in the game, and that was always going to be really important for us.
There are multiple facets to the work that you do, but we can't ignore contracts and sales. Two really key ones. There have been a lot of departures, but I want to focus on two. I'm gutted to see Calvin Ramsey go so soon, because I think he's a wonderful talent, a good athlete. But clearly the package deal achieved by Aberdeen in that has been really positive for us. I want to know about your role in that. And I'm just back from Italy, where I was interviewing Liam Henderson at Empoli, just at the time that we were saying goodbye to Ferguson. And Liam was saying, look, I'll look after him, I want to be in touch. And I said, good lad, there's more to give, I think. Because the number of goals he produced in a team that wasn't functioning particularly well last season, the fact that he's had Scotland call-ups, there's probably more to come from Lewis Ferguson. But again, we did reasonably well on the deal there. Give people as much information as you can about those two deals and your role in it, although it's there are other people who have responsibility for sales, so that people can understand what it is you do in situations like that, and where you're, if at all, proud of what you managed to achieve in those two situations.
Well, again, we have to rewind the clock to really see why we're able to arrive at some of the deals we have with these two top talents that you've just mentioned there. And you can't clearly achieve those types of figures if players are running their contracts down, or they've got a year of a contract left, for example. Because then they can set a contract out, they can maybe leave for a training compensation amount, or even free, depending on the age of the players. So it's been important for us for the last number of years to try and get who we believe our emerging talents are, the ones that could have potential significant value further down the line, committed to long-term contracts. And we were able to do that clearly with Lewis when he first came in from Hamilton on a 4-year contract. And that 4-year contract then gave us the basis to commit him to a longer term 5-year contract within 1 year of him actually being at Aberdeen. And once we've got that, then we've got confidence in dealing with any interested clubs, that we've got protection on the club side, but also we recognise that the whole model is to be able to realise a value at a certain point in time. The trick, I suppose, is to have the timing of that on the club's time frame rather than on the buying club's time frame. So I think we were able to achieve that with Lewis. We had him here, I think, for 4 years. He made a huge contribution to the team in so many different ways. Because we had that protection, then we've got confidence to then go and engage with these clubs when they make their approaches. And I think for too long, Scottish talent's been undervalued in the market right across Europe. And what we're seeing now is, and it's a phenomenon that's, I suppose, changed over the last 18 months, at Pittodrie certainly, we've got Serie A clubs attending, we've got Bundesliga clubs, we've got English Premier League clubs. And they're coming because we've been brave enough to put emerging talent into the team. Some of these guys, when they first come in, might not actually be ready to come in, but because we've been brave enough, and because what these clubs are investing in is potential largely, you know, they're not coming buying 27, 28-year-old ready-made players. They're, you know, Liverpool are investing in an 18-year-old who made his debut at 17, played, you know, 35, 40 games in our first team. And while we would have liked to have Calvin longer than we did, again, he would have been entering the last 2 years of his contract, and now was the right time to realise that value. And I suppose the follow-up question to that is, well, why didn't we have him on a longer-term contract than he was on? When he signed his extension right before he got his exposure in the first team, which is probably a good time for us to commit players to. Again, some will work out, some will not, but when they do work out, this is the type of value you can realise. So a lot of that's down to the relationship with the player, with his family, with his agent. And, you know, we're grateful to the agents we've been dealing with these players as well, because they've trusted us to commit to long-term contracts with the club. But also we've been able to work together to make sure that when the time is right for them to move on, that we're not pulling in different directions and we're looking to achieve the same things.
I really like the fact that if we have to say goodbye to Calvin Ramsey, not only is it a club where you hope he'll be well developed, we went toe-to-toe with them. Now, I don't know the answer to this question. Stephen, who went toe-to-toe with them in the negotiations, which they didn't particularly enjoy? And the reason is, I think we came out with a very well-constructed, my opinion, good deal. Who went toe-to-toe with Liverpool?
Well, on most of these deals, it's myself and Dave that get involved in the dialogue with our counterparts at the opposing clubs. Sometimes you're dealing with a sporting director, sometimes you're dealing with a CEO and an owner. So it's myself and Dave that take a sort of joint role in that. I do a lot of the day-to-day talking. Clearly, this has been a dialogue that's been ongoing for some months. These things don't happen overnight, so I take a large part of that responsibility. But when it comes to the crux, when it comes to the you know, is it the right deal for the club, then myself and Dave are involved in that, and then we take that to the board to, I suppose, to say if they're happy for us to take that forward or not.
Is it a bit of a test? Because it's a poker game. You know, there are construct points where clubs will say, aye, okay, fair enough, you want to sell on value, and okay, we will announce it this way, and maybe the basic price is, and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of bluff and spoof going on about, well, he's not worth it, you can't be serious about that. Is that process a test? Does it need a bit of lizard brain in there as well as your professional skills?
Yeah, I think so, but you need to be able to negotiate from a position of strength. Otherwise, the bluff is valueless at that point. And to get that position of strength, you need to have that commitment on the longer term contract. Otherwise, other clubs are going to call that bluff.
But Calvin didn't have that. That's my point. I'm talking about this deal in particular. I'm talking about this deal because I was quite proud of the fact that, again, I say it, because if we had to lose him, it had to be for decent money. Had to have a sell on it. I can't imagine that, particularly a club as used to dealing with Liverpool, as used to being able to say, right, we'll walk away. I cannot imagine, and I know that they felt that they were getting their toes trampled on. I know, having spoken to them, and they were full of bluster about, you know, oh, I can't believe in this, he's only a kid and all that. But I think they coughed that they wanted him in the first team squad. They wanted him to be competing with Trent for rotation at least as soon as possible. It cannot have been, it must have been negotiations which, although they were similar to the other ones you've done, they were at Champions League level. Yeah,
absolutely. And again, it's the work that you do before you get involved in the negotiation that I suppose helps that process. And you know, we look at things like, right, what's the turnover of the club? There's data out there that will tell you the percentage that a club will invest. You know, depending on where they see a player, whether he's a core player, a squad player, or you know, coming in as an emerging player like Calvin would be at Liverpool. And so we're able to actually go to these clubs and objectively say, look, this is a reason why we're putting this value on on this player. And clearly it's then the challenge of the buying club to, I suppose, to give their reasons why the value isn't quite what they thought it was. But because we're a well-run club, because we're currently in a position of financial stability, while there's a desire to maximise the value at any given time, it's not that we absolutely have to sell at the first, flirtation with a buying club. And because, we've got the backing of Dave and the investor group that he's brought on board, and because we've made good financial decisions over the last sort of 10 years or so, then we're not forced into doing or making a sale that we're not comfortable with.
Okay, we're closing now. Snapshot answers. Let's give the fans a little bit of a taste of. You've been in the club over 2 years. You did your degree at Robert Gordon University. You began at the club when you were on a placement year. And largely, although there's been a variance in your title, no doubt your salary over 20 years, tell them a little bit about maybe the first deal for a player you saw. You were kind of on the periphery of going over the line. But then once Dave Johnson, who was your boss for a long time, moved into other projects and you largely were doing what you're doing now, the first one maybe that you were pretty wholly responsible for getting done with everybody else's support. Those two case studies just would be interesting for people to know.
I mean, it's a long time ago now, thinking back to, it was year 2000 when I started on my placement. That took me 1 year. So into 2001, it was, players like Roberto Visconti and Eugene Daddy. They were the types of players that come in that first sort of full season that I had. Clearly, there were players at the time already in the group like Ian Jess, Paul Bernard, that moved on during that sort of first 18 months of my time at the club. And it was interesting because I shared an office with David Johnson all those years ago. I was completely exposed to every conversation that was happening. Even back as early as then, I was involved in the football strategy meetings that Eb Scovedal, Gardner Spears, Drew Jarvie, all these guys would have sat on. And I'd like to think over that long period of time, being exposed to a lot of these guys, that Steve Patterson followed, and Jimmy Calderwood, Mark McGee, Craig, and then Derek and Stephen Glass, obviously, that it would be folly if somebody to be exposed to these guys and the conversations that are happening over that long period of time and not come away with something valuable or experience from it. So I'm really grateful for all these guys that I've been able to work with over that period of time. And to, I suppose, my evolution in this role and why I suppose the club over a period of time had confidence to give me this responsibility was, again, it never happened overnight, but going back to, when David Johnson was still in the role and I was doing a lot of the negotiating with agents and players when they were still development squad players, under 18, under 19, players, and a lot of these players evolved into being Aberdeen first team players. So because the relationship with the agent was through myself, then that progression just happened naturally, that I would pick up the next conversation with that agent if it was then in a first team contract and beyond. And when my role, I suppose, changed to football operations manager, and alongside Derek McInnes, I was doing quite a significant amount of the actual contract negotiations. Obviously, Derek and Russ were bringing the players to the table, and Russ he was very good at making sure that the expectations of player and agent were set before they came to me, and I think that's really important. It's something Darren Mowbray's continued as well. It was players like, Scott Mckenna, who I dealt with Scott and his agent, Gordon Reid, all through, Scott coming in as a 16, 17-year-old. And, I suppose, a proud moment for me, not because we got him to commit to a long-term contract, but just because, we'd seen that guy develop over a long period of time, put everything he had into being a professional and maximising his talent, and to see him get rewarded with a long-term contract, and then obviously get his move to Forest, and now he's going to be an EPL player. Those are the types of things that make you immensely proud for the small part in the role that you've played in that person's career.
And congratulations on that. It's the stuff of mythology, but was there a financial bonus for Aberdeen when Scott went up to the Premier League?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I'm stopping asking any further questions because I suspect you wouldn't tell me the amount, but okay, good negotiations. Last two. Have you decided on a place in the trophy cabinet for Conor Barron's Ballon d'Or when he eventually does win that beautiful award?
Unfortunately for us, there's too much space in the trophy cabinet. That's something we're trying to.
We'll do another of these interviews halfway through the season when I think we've already nicked the League Cup. Conor, I only joke about because he excites me hugely individually. When Jim Goodwin talked to me about him in the interview we did at the end of the season, he talked about potentially him being in the line of three behind a single striker. If Jim sets out his stall in certain games as 4-2-3-1, which he said was one of his two key intentions. I'm hugely excited about Conor because I think he's an extremely agile, good vision, wants the ball all the time, Aberdeen DNA right through him, comes from good stock. How vital is it in your role to help Gavin Levy and Simi and the academy produce people like him, and two, are there others like him in the academy coming through?
First of all, it's vitally important. So, I don't think we would be Aberdeen Football Club without having that DNA of young players getting exposure in the first team, and the manager being brave enough to give players that opportunity. And we've seen it already, this season through the League Cup games where, Jack Milne, Liam Harvey, two off the top of my head, Hancock, have all contributed. Ryan Duncan as well came back.
Ryan looked really nice against Peterhead when I saw him when he came on.
So that's four players right away that have spent time through our development system, significant time through our development system, and who have already got exposure in competitive football. And clearly, Conor's one that got that opportunity last year. He's one, I think, that excites everybody, and I think he is. He's not the poster boy of the academy, but in terms of what we are trying to produce coming out of the academy, he's ticking clearly a lot of those boxes. There was a huge effort going back a good number of years to evolve the way that we train players within the academy. And I think when you see the technical prowess of Conor, how he looks after the ball, where his first touch takes him, the range of passing he has, he's dynamic, despite his size. That isn't something that hinders him on the pitch, and that's, I think, because he's clever and he's one step ahead of his opponents. And I think we've seen elements of that as well in Calvin Ramsey. A right-sided fullback that can come in off the right side onto his left foot and smash a left foot drive from 25 yards like he did down at Dundee. To be able to, these things don't happen by accident. And I think there was a video that was circulating on social media after we sold Calvin to Liverpool that showed him doing one of the skills tests that we'd set one summer. And I think he was 12 or 13 or something when that was videoed. But you can see, even at that early age, that ability to come off of both feet, the balance, the touch, these are all things that maybe for a period in time Scotland was falling behind its competitor nations in Europe. But I think that's a reason why Serie A clubs, Bundesliga clubs, EPL clubs are coming to watch our young talent now, because I think they can see that technical abilities beyond where it probably was before.
Listen, as somebody who met you first 8 or 9 years ago in Spain, when I think I'd helped in some degree to get you, Gav Levy, Simi and Emma Flett in, I think to study at Majadahonda at Letty's training ground, I think, and subsequently I got Barry Robson back there. I can testify to exactly what you've said about the roots in terms of youth development and playing styles and skill sets having been developed for an awful long time. The close, I think, has to be, I don't really care if people think this is too PR or club or corporate, you can't do all the recruiting, planning, restructuring, strategizing without, for my opinion, two very clear streams of support. One comes from the chairman and the board, and the other has to come from the fans. Now, the fans were clearly and correctly some of the quality of performances, particularly on the road, I think, last season. Yet, they kept turning out in big numbers. I mean, decent numbers, again, that bear comparison with Pittodrie across my entire life. And on the road, very healthy numbers, noisy numbers too. This is my chance to close the interview, Stephen, letting you talk about those two different kinds of support, because the vast majority of the intellectual support and financial support needs to come from up above. But the fans give the players and the club hard-earned cash and love and aspiration and devotion, and without those two, tributaries of support and belief and faith, you couldn't be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think firstly on the support from above, we clearly in the board that has been assembled now, these people are very driven. They absolutely want the club to succeed. They don't want us to be standing still, and clearly all of the people within the club that are employed by the club are ambitious too, and none of us want to be standing still, and that's why we're always on this evolution of, on my side, what the football operation actually looks like, investing in different areas of that. But you've seen the big infrastructure projects. The board have driven through Dave Cormack the training ground here at Cormack Park, which has been a huge asset for us. Clearly there's a plan in place to move to a new stadium that can help us again move to the next level in terms of being able to drive that turnover up to the 20 million mark that the board set as a target a couple of years ago. And I think those types of projects are evidence of the drive of the people that are pushing this from Dave and the board down. I think from the fans' perspective, I've been lucky enough to see the support of the fans through some really difficult periods, going back over the last 22 years or so, and they've always given us their backing. They've saved the club at times when, in the early 2000s, the financial situation was a lot more dire than it's ever been since, and for that we'll always be eternally grateful. Clearly, if we're going to be able to achieve on the pitch, we'll need the support of the fans to help us to do that, and likewise we've got a responsibility on the football side to give them something to get excited about. Now, you said right at the start of the call, the wins for us are, getting these players recruited. I don't think we're quite at any wins yet. That getting players recruited is obviously one part of that, and the next part of it is making sure that we can perform on a match day and get the outcomes on the pitch that we all crave. So there won't be any celebrating on this side unless there's something tangible for us to celebrate to come the end of the season and beyond that. I actually think there's a third area of support as well, and that's the people that commit so much time and sacrifice within the club. And I'm really lucky that I've got a dedicated team of people in Emma Flett, who you've referenced, Chris Maver, and Laura McCallum, who is our new lawyer, in-house lawyer, who came in not too long ago as well. And all of these people have had a significant role to play in helping recruit and attract these players as well. When we're going through, the governing body endorsement process, when we're going through the visa process, when we're getting these players integrated into the city and making that transition as smooth as possible. And I just want to extend a huge thanks to them as well for the part that they've played in getting us to where we've arrived at today.
We've spent the entirety of this chatting about the men's team and the youth system. I was hugely proud and impressed by the women's team, which I think also falls under your remit last season. They start against Hamilton on the 7th of August. I don't know if it's 10 days or so away right now as we speak. I haven't done my counting properly. Maybe just about 2 weeks. They've had a proper pre-season. Am I right in thinking that at this stage we can be proud about the quality of the squad, their league performance, and also I think that we've seen exponential growth in terms of both those areas, quality and performance, over the last 3-4 years?
Yeah, I think when we took responsibility on for the women's team, I think going back 3-4 years, obviously at a difficult period when they'd come off the back of 2 relegations, and the aim was always to get back to SWPL 1, which we've been able to achieve. We've played a significant role as well in the migration for the women's top tier across to the SPFL, and hopefully with that comes more commercial support, more opportunities to grow the game further, and obviously more commercial opportunities that can help us again reinvest back into the women's team here. But also we've got a vision now where we want to be developing the whole women's ecosystem in the North East, and our responsibility would go beyond just the 20 odd players that operate in the women's team on a match day just now. Clearly that's going to take a bit of time, quite significant resource to do that, but we are developing our 3 to 5 year plan on that now. And we'll have members of the women's team involved in that process, and again, fortunate that we've got the support from all the other functions in the club in terms of building the profile of the women's game, from the marketing team, the commercial team, the PR team. So we've got all of that support, and hopefully we can enjoy another successful season. The challenge for us is obviously recruiting players from out with the area. Our talent pool really is focused on the North East at present, but again we'll be looking at how do we create opportunities for players maybe to come from further afield if we need to do that. But one thing that again we've been successful at, like on the men's side, is bringing local young talented girls into the women's programme. So I think 5 players we committed to this season from the AFC Ladies under-19 group that played in the Scottish National Performance programme last season, and we've got that relationship with AFC Ladies that's seamless now, where players can that are signed for the under-19 programme can come up and supplement our squad as well. So that pathway, and being able to show that pathway to young girls, and that they can see that there's the opportunity for professional football potentially at the end of this now that we've committed to 5 professional contracts. That opportunity is going to be there for young girls in this region when, looking back a couple of years, that just wasn't there.
Stephen, I'm hugely enthused, just so that everybody's absolutely clear. I don't do this as a paid job. I do it because I'm convinced. I believe in what I'm seeing happening. I believe in the strategies behind the actions. Last season was brutally tough for us all to suffer within and out with the club. But I want to say, you've explained very well some of the background of what we've all watched happening this summer. You won't say it, but I'll say it. I think in terms of Aberdeen in Scotland, we've won the summer. So far, the market's not closed yet. That's my point of view. I also fully expect us to be covered. I don't like the euphemisms that I hear across football right now. This is a season where we can, and I hope will, win a cup. going close or see how we go. It's all very good in terms of jargon. This is a season where we can, and I hope we will, win a cup. And I'm excited to watch the team gel. Thank you for taking the time to explain it. I think you explained it well. There's a lot for Dandies fans to talk about, whether they've liked what you or I have said or not. You've given them meat on the bone, and I appreciate you doing it. Director of Football, Stephen Gunn. Up the Dandies.
Thanks, Graham.